of the recommendation they made. We have, I don't know, Chair, whether I can go to the other issues. There were around 3 of them.
Yeah, sure.
What is your current target for 2022, 2023? After that year, the next year, what was your next target after that 1.1 million of that year?
Our target was, I think it was 1 million again.
After realizing that you can hit 1 million, you again set 1 million. Are you setting lower targets, or you're underestimating your potential to work harder?
I think these are targets that were locked in by the ministerial policy statement, and we follow those.
Chair,
you're now taking me to the ministerial policy statement, my dear. I say, aren't you setting lower targets for yourselves? You set 1 million, you got 1 million, you again set yourself at 1 million. Yet you have data like he has, like the ED has said, CG has said. You had the data, you had third party, you had what? Aren't you setting lower targets?
And you've just said that the auditor you will realize that now you are going.
I think that's why you're saying that you're over.
Just said it, some means
you are achieving more than 100% because you're putting lower targets.
I think the general point is, so yes, the COVID year, as you're saying, you recruited fewer taxpayers. Maybe understandable. Following year, over 1 million. The concern is you should be working harder to recruit more taxpayers. Because you see, the challenge we have in our country is there's a few people that shoulder the tax burden, especially those in formal employment. Those are easy to go after. Their salaries and so on. But you people don't seem to be casting your net wide enough to bring everybody within, you know, you want to call them tax brackets or whatever the case might be. Yeah, those that should be paying taxes. That's the concern. That people should be working a lot harder because you are working alongside these several entities, and we'll be asking a bit about that. But first, respond to that. Yes.
I don't know. Can you clarify your question? Because the way I understood your question, that you were able to recruit more people, probably less people with the same amount. But then the following year, you spent the same amount, but recruited less. Is that what I got from you?
Actually, they spent less money the following year and recruited much more.
Much more.
Because 2020, 2021.
And what about the expenditure? I was looking at the expenditure part of it.
The expenditure was 7.46 billion.
Yes.
For 2020, 2021. And they recruited 167,000 taxpayers.
And the following year, the expenditure was what?
The following year, expenditure was 6.41 billion. And they recruited over 1 million, 1.1 million taxpayers. His reasoning is, yes, COVID, and yet you still had to meet bills. I don't know what more, because if things were not operating as should, what exactly the 7.46 billion do? In addition to these other questions.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. We really appreciate the comments on expanding the tax register. And Honorable Chair, this is our focus and priority. Just as an indication, in just before COVID, the year 2019, 2020, our tax register was at 1.7 million taxpayers. As at the end of the current financial year, our tax register is at 3.3 million taxpayers. So there is significant growth of almost double. However, Honorable Chair and members, as we onboard new taxpayers, especially those that we get from third-party information, there is need to onboard these taxpayers, to handhold them, sensitize them, and to make them accept the fact that it is the responsibility of every citizen to contribute towards the national development. So all of them do not add value instantly, and all of them also take time to accept the new obligation that they have not been used to. So honorable members, you'll be hearing a lot of outcry there in the public. We are being overtaxed, we are being, and so on and so forth. But this is the effort. So we are combining, it's like a balancing act. And that speaks about the issue of targets. Yes, we did a lot of data analysis during the lockdown as URA. We are not approaching, but we are using data to know who is doing which activity. And therefore, in the following year, we register the number. And then we go through the cleaning process. Because the one you register, you record him, he says, no, I don't know that team. I don't know the activity you're talking about. I don't know this supply. So in a way to try and clean and onboard the people you have registered, sometimes we lower these numbers of targets to the TREP team and other registration groups, so that the ones we register, we bring them to maturity, we bring them to the purpose of registration, which is beginning to pay tax. So the numbers are good and we would want to drive them. We have a medium term program to at least have 5 million taxpayers by the year 2025. But we are also mindful of the quality and the contribution that will come from the newly registered taxpayers. So that's how the numbers vary, Honorable Chair and members.
How do you set these targets? Because the general concern is that everybody is not paying their fair share. You'll find the small income earners, the small business people, those that you're able to go after, they are paying. But as we shall be discussing along the way, there are people who are not paying what they should for different reasons, and we'll be getting to those. So now you're giving us a target. How do you set this target to determine, maybe realistically or otherwise, for this year, we're going to go after this number of people, how, and so on?
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and I'll ask the Commissioner for IT and one for domestic taxes to give more detailed comments. But just to mention that the kind of data that we analyze gives us indications on who is paying what tax. I'll give an example of KCCA data or any other local government for that matter. When we received from them how many people have been licensed, then that's an indication that those people who have trading licenses are doing some businesses. So we get into verification, the level of business, and what taxes we can register them for. When we get IFMIS data, it gives us who is supplying government. Then we go back and check, are they registered for taxes? And then we reach out. So we use different data sets. When we receive national water data, it tells us how many meters. And then we match these meters against an individual team. If someone has 3-4 meters, it most likely means that he has more than one house. But sometimes when you go into the verification, you actually find that these meters are in the same house, 3 different meters to different buildings within. So there is a bit of verification, but there is a bit of indicative data. So we use indicative data to tell us how many more we can bring on board. And we use this to give targets to the teams responsible for those areas. And then when they verify and register, we adjust those numbers accordingly. But Honorable Chair, it's teamwork. I would like my colleagues to add any more comments on how we come up with these numbers.
Excuse me,
Okay.
Chair.
Yes, Honorable Linda.
Yeah, Chair, before the Commissioner explains to us, I wanted him also to make clarification on this, on the issue of high taxes. Some people have been overtaxed, and sometimes they write no objection letters to URA to review. But it has happened that sometimes you take long, like months, without replying them, and these people are there, they are being charged interest every month, and yet URA doesn't give them feedback. Then also on the issue of some of the entities that you work with, like Ministry of Local Government, where I've seen that for the past like 4 years, you have been overrating the taxes to collect, whereby you target like 60 billion, at the end of the day, you collect 18, but you continue targeting the same amount of money which you don't collect. So I would like to seek clarification from you. Why do you continue targeting high targets which you are not collecting? Thank you.
Yes, sir, Honorable Mzali.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I have two concerns. One is, first of all, to beef up what my colleague has just said. In particular, I will be very specific. We have supermarkets, and in the business of supermarkets, many of them, by the way, are closing out business. The reason is there is tax discrimination. Some other supermarkets are paying exactly what is supposed to be. Others are favored. And that has killed so many supermarkets. If you look at ShopRite, Tuskys, so many of them have closed out business because of the unfair system that is happening. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, if you look at this table 9, you'll see that they have performance targets. And of course, those performance targets have a budget. But if someone performs below even 50%, what happens to the budget that you gave him? Does he still take that action money? Because I'm looking at now, if you look at URSB, that is 2019-2020, the budget performance was 17.7%. And they had a budget for that activity based on the target performance. Did they return some money? Or that is money to enjoy at the end of the day? Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Abdallah.
Thank you, Chair. To supplement on the issue raised by my colleague, and to be specific, we have seen businesses which have benefited from waiver of taxes, like game, for a specified period of time. And immediately when the waiver is expiring or when it has expired, these businesses close and go. They have benefited from us, and the government has not benefited from them. Through you, Honorable Chair, I'm requesting URA to avail us a list of all businesses which are benefiting from the waiver, including those who have benefited and closed, to pave a way for us to advise Parliament in our report. Thank you.
Yeah, and perhaps this begs a question. We certainly are going to require that list, but because we want to be sure everyone is paying their fair share. Many times you hear, especially as I said earlier, people in the formal sector, they are the ones shouldering the bulk of the burden, because for them it is easier. By the time the person gets their salary, 30% is off and that kind of thing. Yeah. How do you determine who gets a waiver? Yeah, how do we make that determination on your end? Just a second. How do you make that determination? Because you see, it could explain why we are recruiting maybe fewer taxpayers than we should. How do we determine who gets a tax waiver and who does not, who qualifies and so on? There are those, of course, that might come through Parliament. There are those on your end. It's important we get enlightenment on that. Yes, Honorable Cooper.
I can see we are now encroached on the revenue before we conclude the corporate. Can we finish with the corporate before we get to the revenue? That aspect now is on the other next report.
Maybe we can tie it in with the revenue performance, which we need to move to immediately after this. But I guess there was a similarity of sorts, because so this is how many people you have recruited, and on our end we are thinking this list should have a lot more people, because you're saying your tax register currently has 3.3 million taxpayers. Our thinking is that figure should be higher, and as we shall look at the figures eventually, you should be collecting a lot more than you are collecting.
So
What we can do, let's finish this, and then because we have 2 items, I believe, left on this corporate, and then we can handle it with the revenue.
Chair, there are issues
Directly.
which before we go to that, FREP revenue collection, which we need to complete on this performance of registration, which I needed to conclude with before we move to that.
Please.
One is the question I put to you, wanting to clarify from you. If you look at the table 8 and table 9, I still insist that we need that clarity. The actual for 2020-2021 for URA was 91,534 registered. And
That's table what?
You are using table 8 and table 9. Table 8 talks about expenditure. Table 9 is about the registered, the actual, the target and the actuals. So I am just looking at URA on the, look at the Auditor General's report. I guess you have the Auditor General's report. On page 15 and 16.
Sorry, Chair, from our document, it's table 9 and 10. Just want to be sure the numbers are still.
You see this Auditor General's reports. Not in your response.
Not in our response.
Page 15 and page 16. And this Auditor General's report. They are tables.
Honorable Chair.
You can read to them the title, Performance of TREP over the years. That's page 9, according to our report here. Table 10, TREP revenue collection from July to June, financial year 2021-2022. Whichever number you have it as, those are the headings of the tables.
That's clear.
Hmm?
That's clear, Chair. We have it with different
Honorable
numbers, but
Chair.
the headers, we have them.
Okay.
So Chair,
Honorable Chair, I'm sorry. I came a little bit late when meeting with the speaker about the road safety was summoned yesterday evening, but we are not following the ED is just nodding the head. So it's like the interaction, what is happening? We just want to get a clear. You are chatting. I'm sorry. You are chatting with the lead counsel, so we are.
Okay, we'll get on the same page very shortly. If you could re-ask that question for clarity, Honorable Cooper.
Councillor Yusuf, can we look at page 15 and 16 of the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Uganda Revenue Authority Corporate Services for the financial year ended 30th June 2022.
Page 15 and 16.
Page 15 and there are two tables. There are two tables, 8 and 9. 8 is talks about the funding, the TREP funding.
Your question is clear, but the response by the ED. No,
he has not yet responded. He didn't have the document.
You are still presenting the question.
Chair. Hey, colleagues, let's have order. What's your question, Honorable Cooper, so that we get a response to it?
I was trying to bring everybody on board. So table 8 and table 9. This connects to the question you are raising, which is not fully answered. You see, in 2020-2021, the target, first of all, the budget was 7.46 billion.
Yes.
Now, what was the actual output? It was 91,534 taxpayers registered. Yes. The following year is the same budget, but the output, the actual of the registered is 836,252. But also in that very year, out of that budget, the funding which was available, 7.46 billion, they spent 641, about 6.4. looking at the figures, because you have spent all the money the previous year and you got 91. But here we are spending less, but achieving 830. It's almost eightfold. Eightfold. So because if it was before COVID, the other previous year, you wouldn't have spent all that money. But now here is, because that's why you can't even achieve much, because there was COVID. But now here is a situation where you have spent money because you can't move. If there was COVID, you can't move. So how would the expenditure happen? If there was COVID, there was no limited movement. It would have been less expenditure, but also less output. But now the following year, we're saying you are spending less, but having an eightfold registration of taxpayers. That was one question on those two tables.
So in other words, what did the 7.6 billion do, for example? Because if you're saying there's COVID, that's why you could not recruit as many taxpayers, but the money was spent, 7.6 billion. And then the following year, 6.41 billion. And for me, I was actually getting the total of all the taxpayers they recruited, not just those under URA. Because URA coordinates all these other entities. That's why I was talking about 1.16 million. Yeah, so what because you said, yeah, you had to pay staff and that kind of thing. Are you saying the 7.6 billion during that year when you recruited few people was all on salaries, or what exactly? What did it do?
Maybe Chair, now that you have said we are looking at a total, we can even bring out a total. That brings us to the question which we had last time. Now, the issue of this money. You remember we had an argument and say, who receives this money under TREP? Does URA receive it and disburse to the others, or the other entities receive also? Maybe you need to know the shares. Maybe that can also explain this year. Maybe because of the sharing, that's why maybe the other was spent. That's why it came in. So we want to know how this money is managed, because it's a project, that TREP project.
Okay, from the documents, I'm coming on Mzali. From the documents that I read, this is a vote to URA. URA disburses to these entities. What we need to know, though, is how do you determine KCCA gets this, Ministry of Local Government gets this, URSB, and that kind of thing. But also, because now the accountability we demand is from you, how do you get these accountabilities from the various entities that you're giving this money to? Because ultimately, it is you disbursing it. It is you as URA that is supposed to account for this money. You're giving it to KCCA to help them in recruiting taxpayers. Local government, you're doing the same. URSB and so on. How do you determine? We will give this amount to each of the entities, and how do they account? That's important. Honorable Mzali, you had a point of procedure.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we are asking questions, and the lead counsel is not allowing the ED to answer our concerns. He's instead busy pushing in his questions all the time. I don't know whether we are proceeding well, because we need answers for our questions that we ask.
All the questions that have been asked are going to get answered. Yeah. So let's have them respond. If you feel there is a question that has not been responded to, then you raise the alert so that we have all the questions responded to. So let's get the answers.
Chair, having responded, I don't determine.
No, don't worry.
Answering of
I've sorted that out already.
I don't determine the answering of the
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members, for the questions. Let me start with the question on TREP, and I'll ask the AC Finance to give us more details on what we spend on each budget activity. But overall, we have a program charter which guides us on what each entity is supposed to do, the activities they will be covering, and how much of the TREP budget they will take. And indeed, Honorable Chair, as we have mentioned, URA gives this money to the entities, they disperse, they make accountabilities, which form part of our accountabilities that we submit at the end of the financial year. But I will ask AC Finance to give us more details on the different activities that we handle under TRIP and how much they take.
Thank you very much, CG. Thank you, Chair. This is a rejoinder to the submission by the Commissioner General. So this TRIP program has the entities that have been listed, and there is a program charter under which it is determined on an annual basis how much will be utilized by each of the entities. So the steering committee of TRIP determines those amounts on an annual basis, and we spend according to that. So some of them, as CG has already mentioned, involve disbursements to the entities where, for instance, that entity could be procuring cars, they could be procuring computers, tools of trade. Then there's also the standard salaries that are paid across all the different entities for the staff that are recruited. So within each of these entities, we have TRIP staff, and their wages are also allocated to that vote. I will request that we are allowed to give the specifics of what was spent against each of the entities. It's not available right now, but we can make that available to account for what each of the entities used for their specific activities. But the charter is what determines what goes to each of the entities. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Chair, can
Just
I
on
proceed
that
to
one,
the
Chair.
next?
So what happens if those entities don't meet the targets? Do you just ignore? Do you do something about it?
Honorable Chair.
They refund when you don't meet the targets, or it's just left at that?
Okay, Honorable Chair and Honorable Member, thank you for that question. Now, there are two targets here. First of all, the monies we give are for specific activities, as already mentioned by AC. And when these entities do not meet their targets, we have that steering committee which reviews the performances, and we sit and agree on the areas of improvement. But the monies that were earmarked for those activities are definitely spent even when they have not met their numbers and targets. It's only the unspent monies that are returned at the end of the year, financial accountabilities, which are returned and they are taken back to the consolidated. But let me ask the Commissioner IT to make some additional comments.
Thank you, CG. Honorable Chair, the activity of expanding the register requires that we work with these parties listed. And part of the work that we've been doing is to build capacity for this kind of synergy to work.
Chair,
If you could
Chair,
pull your microphone closer.
Be informed that you are informing us, not the chair alone.
Even the chair was about to say that he speaks louder. Just pull the microphone closer if you can, and then amplify.
Thank you, Honorable
You know, these IT people, they're always dealing with machines and what. and so they don't talk to the machines. Maybe that's the challenge, but please proceed, Commissioner.
I hope I'm very clear. Thank you, Honorable Member. Saying that we require to work with these different entities for us to build a footprint for registration and tax payment. And in the first years, we've been building capacity, and a lot of this money has been going to IT tools to equip the teams to be able to do the work. And if we take an example of, let's say, URSB, the dream is that if you are to register your business so that to transform from the informality of business, you should also be able to register for your taxes at the same transaction point, and then be able to be educated and onboarded into the tax system. It is the same for the local governments. And one of the projects we worked on is the integrated revenue administration systems with the local government. If you look at, I was just looking at the document here that I can refer us to very quickly, the budget execution circular for this year. In there are details of what IRAS, this integrated system, has done. And it's reflecting that we're actually beginning to see revenue growth coming in from the revenue, the local governments growing because of the activities that come from building this capacity. So my point, Honorable Chair, is that the first years have been about building capacity, but we begin to reap the rewards of that in terms of expanding revenue collection and as well as registration on the tax base.
Yes, Honorable Jessica.
Thank you. I want to pick from what he had just said, that the returns from our district local governments are growing. Indeed, that's true, but the businesses are collapsing. Chair, many shops have closed. I want to know whether they do assessment to give a feedback to government. As Parliament, we appropriate and we approve all these taxes, but we need a reliable feedback from the implementers, because I live in Adjumani and many shops have closed. Some people have failed to pay their loans, because as you are paying the loans, you're also paying many taxes. So what is your role in giving feedback to us, so that as we sit in Parliament, we take care of these things that we approve? Thank you.
Yes, CG. And as you respond to that, we still need a response to the expenditure in the COVID year, the 7.46 billion. What did that money do?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think on that one, Honorable Chair, the SC Finance made a request to allow us time to prepare and see what we spent on. She didn't have the numbers off cuff, but we can provide this for sure at the earliest, maybe tomorrow. I was going to say today, but we may not have it delivered before.
Okay, let's have it tomorrow morning.
Okay, sir. So, Honorable Chair, if I can quickly go to the other questions.
Chair, I'm sorry, just supplement. Does withholding tax really go back to the taxpayers? And we have evidence to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Member. Let me start with the withholding tax question as a follow-up. Now, Honorable Esther, the questions that you are raising are Jessica, my apologies. Honorable Jessica, my apologies. The questions that you are raising are valid. We will take interest in reporting on the effect of taxation on businesses. But maybe if I can just give a general comment, honorable members, that the taxes we take from the small businesses, especially in those towns up country, the main tax we collect from them is a tax called presumptive tax. It was passed here by Parliament. It is a form of income tax, but it can be paid by small businesses who may not even have record of what they have done. And it is also paid in tranches. So the lowest tranche is 80,000 income tax for that whole financial year. 80,000. So I don't think there is a business that can close because of 80,000. And this is any business that has a turnover in the whole financial year of domestic taxes. Can you remind me?
I hear members murmuring. Think they wanted to put the CG on a point of order.
Yes.
Anyhow, let him first finish, then we'll follow up.
Okay. So I was saying, Honorable Chair, that the lowest tax is 80,000. The next is 200,000. The next is 400. And I think the highest is 800,000. So this is presumptive tax. But we will, following the the comment raised by the honorable member, take interest in knowing those who have closed, what the reason could be. But we're also working with the local governments to try and harmonize taxation so that we approach these entities as one government. Because it's true that the local governments also collect those trading license fees. There are also other taxes. So we are having an engagement where we are saying, as one government, can we collect one tax from these businesses? And then we have a technology that helps us share each one that is supposed to go to local government and to the central government. That is discussion underway. And with the help of automation, we'll get to that level. But Honorable Chair and members, if I can quickly talk about the next question, which was on waivers, and I'll ask the Commissioner Legal to explain the nature of waivers, because Honorable Chair, as you indicated, there are those waivers that are already in the law passed by Parliament. And our role there is just to sensitize the taxpayers of the tax benefits that they can take advantage of as long as they meet certain requirements. But there are those waivers that taxpayers, when they're having hardships, apply for, and still the final approval is with Parliament. But I will ask the Commissioner Legal to explain a little more on the laws that apply and the processes involved in these tax waivers. I just wanted to set a clear record that there is no time when Uganda Revenue Authority has given a waiver on its own. So there are no waivers on our side. It is whatever starts there must come to the Ministry of Finance, and Ministry of Finance must bring it to Parliament for final approval.
Yes, please.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. Let me start with the 80,000, the small money we're talking about. CG, I want to tell you, you are existing because of small businesses, not big businesses. Those who are avoiding taxes are the big ones. Now, the chapati maker, 80,000 is a road, that is capital. And if they are about 1 million in Kampala, and you said the 80 cannot close, then we need to go down and assess. Secondly, why she was insisting on saying, do you go down to assess the situation? Since COVID, let me give you an example of rental houses. Majority of the people could not afford, they left the houses. KCC is demanding ground rent, you are demanding your monies. Without even stating, knowing what is happening in the place, apart from the IT man sitting on his computers and sending messages, taxes, taxes, tax, as if COVID, you are not aware that it took place. This the ground is she was talking about. Go down and see what is happening and why people are closing. Instead of getting interested in only getting taxes. Yes, we want taxes, but you should also go down and see what is taking place since COVID. Yeah.
Additional. So in other words, if URA can give us an excuse that as a result of COVID, they didn't hit certain targets of recruiting taxpayers, yet they spent money, they should also allow that as a reason from their clients. Do you call them clients? Yeah, they are your clients really, because they give you money, which eventually, also it should be a two-way.
Mr. Chairman, I'm asking for clarity on this, direct in regard to what Honorable my neighbor here has just raised. May I know, is there a provision for a review? Because we all know that during COVID, many businesses got affected. One to do schools. Many schools closed. Now that COVID is over, they have resumed. But when you go to regional offices, the IT man or IT people, they are ever sending messages. Shouldn't you happen to forward this? It will be closed. I've interacted with many school operators. They are really in tears. Is there any provision whereby you can send your people to Gandhi physically assess what happened to such businesses? Because we represent their interests here. And I'm happy that I'm interfacing with the CJ. I raised this issue before you at Chankwa's, sorry, Honorable Senyo was not there when I mentioned Chankwa.
But me, I didn't have to be there.
He was sick. He did not on Zoom. So, Commissioner, could there be a review?
I expected you to raise a point of order.
Yeah, I know.
But now that you didn't raise it, Honorable Andwasi, proceed.
Okay, I've ended. I just wanted to know whether there can be
Okay.
kind of a review over look into such businesses.
Chair, now that he was explained to in Chankwanzi, is in order to ask for a re-explanation. What did he understand then? Why did he go to Chankwanzi?
Okay, it's possible that either in Chankwanzi, for whatever reason, he could not get a satisfactory answer, but here in COSASE, he's going to get a satisfactory answer, and I will ensure of that. So no problem. You can ask that question, and we will get an answer here. We shall not let them go. Yes, Honorable Itungo, and then I'll come to the Honorable Chair of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, I just want a clarification from the Commissioner General. Chair, you know, URA collects for universities, the school fees, including ID money. So I want to know whether you take that school fees as part of your correction and if it is also part of your budget. And yet this money is supposed to go back to universities. Because I've seen the Minister of Finance saying you have hit your target, you have overcorrected. So I want to know if that school fees is also part of your correction.
Actually, it's not true that they hit their targets. Shortly, we are going to go to the revenue performance. You realize they did the COVID year, but they still didn't hit their targets by over 700 billion, 740 billion. I was looking at the documents. So it was worse during COVID, but even last year, they didn't hit the target. So I don't know where you're getting that finance is saying that they are overperforming, but we'll get to that. Yes, Honorable Chair.
Yes, maybe it is better you refer to me as Honorable Amos Kankunda, because they will think you're talking about yourself. Colleagues, I have heard ourselves talk about challenges to do with the domestic revenue mobilization as a strategy. We should know that on one side of supply, the resource envelope, we need to address it without necessarily injuring our people, but also come to terms with the fact that we need to collect revenue in order to meet the demands of our budget. Honorable Chair and colleagues, for example, talking about that presumptive tax that they give to some of our constituents. I'll give an example of myself. There is a trading center, it's a town council. Some of the traders who have shops of garments were given a presumptive tax of about 80,000, like the Commissioner General is saying. And he was saying, like, this is, am I supposed to pay this? So I realized one thing is we need sensitization of our taxpayers, which is very critical. And two, before I go to number two, sensitization, why? Because our people, unless they understand preliminary bookkeeping, they will not appreciate what you're telling them. So and filing returns and all this, and the tax identification numbers they've opened, some of them were opened even irregularly, they closed them, they don't have business, meaning that point number two, we need to clean our register. To clean our register, some of them maybe they have registered in doing business, yet they were only transferring a motor vehicle into their names, so that we're able to understand what business are they in. And thirdly, Honorable Chair and colleagues, unless we grow our taxpayer base, tax base widening, we are not going to get revenue. And growing that means even if someone pays 20,000 in a year, but finally it adds to the resource envelope. So it is important that the Uganda Revenue Authority deliberately goes out to clean their register. That's one. Two, goes out to sensitize our people and appreciate the need for taxes. That's what I thought I should share. Thank you.
Okay. Honorable Mwada, you came extremely late. Have you read through the documents first before you submit?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I will go spot on and speak like a villager to URA.
as we discuss tax registration and this expansion program, I'm more interested in their partner called the Ministry of Local Government. And this is where the tragedy is. In the interest of realizing this expansion program for registration, URA, according to reports from communities, deployed just IT experts, not actually tax experts, but basically IT people and a few computers in villages. They registered randomly. It became a requirement in local governments now that to do even a chapati business, a license you have to register with URA. This is what is happening in communities. And now this random registration would pick a chapati and they would presume that your income is 50 million this year. So they create a presumption and they register it against that particular taxpayer. The interest of this chapati seller is to secure a license because the local government is closing his or her business. And their interest in registration has been purely to register these operational taxes, licenses. The tragedy we have is that URA has entered wrong information in terms of account records for small scale business owners, including chapati vendors, among others. And that wrong information is being used. Because now when you hear that the program was extended, well, that is one way. But in terms of the repercussions on community, that you have wrong information, wrong data captured against individual taxpayers, some of which you just assertively describe the figures that this is their income per a period of accounting year. And this is why the problem is that people are being taxed and being demanded of taxes which they don't actually qualify for. What efforts are being done to review this data captured from communities? Because here you may disguise that yes, the program extended, but it's extended. First of all, there's a lot of legal information captured. You disguise under the law that once this information is captured, URA just tabulates every time there's a quotation sent on someone's email. Probably, but as well in communities, most of these emails most of these village owners don't own emails. Some use neighbors' emails. Now they just find URA closing them without even knowing that they have a tax obligation. But more importantly is that the presumptive income registered against some of these taxpayers, the low income earners, is not true. What are the efforts to review such? Minus saying that you have expanded the program, but there is also wrongly captured data in terms of the presumptive tax payable, among others. What are the efforts being done to review such a process, and what should the community do? Those who have a lot of higher taxes, where should they run to? Because there's nowhere to run to. I had someone talking about waivers. Those are for the rich. Where should the poor come to also register their complaint and attend to their complaints that this is not a tax applicable to me, it's a higher tax, where should I run to? Minus us discussing the expansion, but we also need to look at the irregularities in the registration and capturing of this data.
Okay. So there's about 3 issues that I'm capturing from colleagues. One, as we were saying, the need to widen so that everybody pays their fair share. And you'll be talking to us about big untouchable people, and yet the small ones, chapati makers and so on, you go and close them down in the little shops. 2, true record being captured, as the Honorable is mentioning, that your assessments seem to be problematic. Maybe we need to know how that gets to happen, because as you're recruiting these people, some of them are crying and saying, I don't make as much as URA is demanding of me. 3, harmonization of the different entities for a uniform tax. You mentioned that, CG. Because you see, you'll find this person, KCCA, will be at their door today for tax. They sort that out. Tomorrow, URA comes and they have to look for money. Otherwise, you're going to close them, up. The other day, I don't know who else comes. And yet all that money is coming to the same pool, if you like. And so people are burdened. They're thinking, wait a minute. Some of them actually see it as looting because they're thinking, I'm making little money. This one comes, the other one comes, and that kind of thing. In more specific terms, that harmonization, how far has it gone? Give us some kind of timeline. so that people know and have a ray of hope, and then they know, okay, so this is how much
Honorable
uniform
Chair,
tax I need to pay.
just
I plan around that.
clarification.
Yes, please.
I think what favor URA can do for us, when you talk about KCC coming to your door asking for this money, URA coming, I think we need clarity here over the tax heads. It is important so that we don't mix up issues. Which tax heads fall under KCCA or any other local authority, and which tax heads are due to URA, so that we don't seem as if there are double taxations here. It is important. Can you please clarify?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Honorable members, for those very important and good questions that you have raised. And Honorable Chair, as per your guidance, let me start with the summarized questions that you have given. Number one, honorable members, we all agree on the need to widen the tax base, and I've just given you the numbers of growth. However, when we're speaking about the targets, you also remember that I mentioned that, like, for example, this financial year, we've agreed that let's register less, but concentrate on cleaning those that we have registered. So that if there is anybody who has been registered for a tax head not appropriate, or who has been assessed and the assessment is not appropriate, we consider their plea and we adjust accordingly. So the biggest gap we have in this area is the taxpayer sensitization, and we're embarking on that very deliberately, so that the taxpayer gets to know what their responsibilities are, but also what their rights are. As an example, this presumptive tax that we are talking about, not everybody should pay it. The small businesses whose turnover is below 10 million shillings should not pay any tax. So if our data has brought in a small trader, maybe dealing in chapati or something, but from the third-party data we have assumed that his turnover is above 10 million. His place of appeal, Honorable, is to object to that tax. And the objection can be done online. It can also be done physically by coming to our offices. And you are saying, I do not have this turnover and I don't think your assessment is fair. Now, URA has 90 days to respond to your objection. In 90 days, we must get back to you saying, no, we have evidence, your turnover is higher, and therefore we think you should pay, or we concede that we are sorry, your turnover seems to be below the threshold, therefore you should not pay. And should we fail to respond in 90 days, then automatically the position of the taxpayer is adopted. They call it election. So if we don't give you an answer in 90 days, you erect automatically and the tax assessment falls null and void. So this is the point of sensitization. Anybody who is not happy with our assessment has a right to appeal. And earlier, another honorable member had asked, people appeal to you and you don't respond. We don't respond at our own peril. 90 days without our response, the law gives the right to the taxpayer to take his position, and therefore the assessment collapses. So honorable members, on this one, URA is embarking on taxpayer sensitization. We are developing a number of programs. We're increasing our footprint and presence on media channels. We want also to seek the support of our leaders, especially the members of parliament, so that we change the mindset of our taxpayers, but most importantly, we also educate them about their rights. Nobody should pay tax for the monies that you don't make, because income tax is based on your profit. It's based on your income. So if for any reason our data is not accurate, and I'm really saying, yes, we know that our data may not be 100% accurate, but it's indicative. That's why it gives us where to go. But we will continue to refine our data, and we'll continue to listen more so that we can take into consideration the appeals from our taxpayers. And we seek your support as honorable leaders in our nation to reach out, because the people have confidence in you as elected leaders. They can listen to you. So once we have sensitized, and on this honorable chair, we are making an application to the Honorable Speaker of Parliament. We want a day with all the members of Parliament, or even two, just to discuss tax matters, so that they understand the hardships of these tax challenges. We also hear from them the challenges of the people they represent, so that going forward in this new financial year, where we expected to raise 30 trillion, we really work together without causing pain, unnecessary pain to the taxpayers. So, Honorable Chair, that is on the first question.
Chair, just information one. These poor people don't have accountants, like the big professional business persons. When they come to report to URA offices, what I hear from society and from community is that unless you have money, you can't be heard, especially those offices where you are saying they run to. And that's why I was very specific, where should they run to? Those with accountants sometimes are assisted, but those without accountants, they are left helpless. And remember, this extension program has been targeting most of these business community without accountants and personal auditors. What is their fate? Because there's an allegation that those with the money are those are assisted, even securing TIN numbers, you know it. People are making legitimate claims that to get a TIN number without money, you can't be assisted. And it has become a crisis. Now, where would this poor person who was just as a chapati seller overtaxed? Where should they go?
Okay, so
the
the point has been made. Let's get him to respond.
Okay, thank you so much, Honorable Chair. And Honorable Mwanda, my apologies. I think you must have come in at the point when I had mentioned this, but for emphasis, let me repeat it. First of all, whatever business you're doing, you know your turnover. So when our people come to register you, they will ask you questions like, how much money do you make in a year? Oh, in a day, you will mention maybe 20,000. How much in a month? And they use those questions they're asking you, how much are you paying for your rent, to estimate your turnover. But as I've said, if you're below 10 million, pay nothing. If you're between 10 and 30, pay 80,000. If you're between 30 and 50, pay 200,000. If you're between 50 and 100, pay 900,000. That is the highest. Now, you don't need an accountant. These are estimates based on the information you give us. But should we still give you an assessment that you're not happy with, object. For objection, you don't have to see anybody. Go online, object. If you don't use a computer, walk to any of our offices and object. Give them your objection in writing and you say, I do not agree with this assessment. We don't respond to you in 90 days, that assessment collapses and nobody will hold you accountable. If we respond to you, we'll have our evidence and you'll also have received our position, either vacating the assessment or sustaining it because of the evidence that we have. Now, Honorable Member, just in addition, the TIN, yes, some years ago was one of the areas of corruption. Some people would demand, and sometimes it would not have to be URA officials, it would be those tax agents, brokers between our offices, they hang around there trying to provide a service. We have demystified and taken away their relevance. Now, TIN, you can apply for it on your mobile phone and you receive it instantly. So where will the person to ask for a bribe come from? Just enter your name, enter your national ID, and you will receive your address, then you receive your TIN instantly. So now TIN is no longer an area of corruption. And you had heard about that, that must be a thing in the past. Now, number two, problematic assessments. Honorable Chair, I think I've touched that a bit. Where our data is not accurate and where we have assessed taxpayers unfairly, the redress is objection. And objection, we are most obliged to address your objection within that period of time, 90 days, nothing more. Now, harmonization of effort, where are we at with the different entities of government? And to combine this with the comment by the Honorable Chair of the Finance Committee, Honorable Amos, what tax heads are we collecting jointly? An example is on the property and rental tax. Local governments collect property tax. This is for every property that you have in their jurisdiction. Whether you stay in that property or you rent it out, there is an annual property tax. URA collects rental income tax. Rental income tax is charged on a property which you don't stay in, which you rent out, and you're earning an income. So such two tax heads are related, and with the facilitation of technology, we can collect them as one government. But it takes technology at the back end, and the Commissioner IT can mention where we are with the effort to integrate. But also remember that you integrate systems that are in existence. So KCCA may have an automated system of assessing property tax, but definitely another district up country may not even have a computer to enter this data. So there is a program of government that is running to try and automate these processes at the local governments. And we are also working on interfacing those that have with our own system. Once the technology has linked in, has tied up, then we can approach a taxpayer as one on related taxes. And my colleague could add more light on that. So, Honorable Chair, those are the responses I can give, but I invite my colleagues to enhance these responses. Thank you.
Yes, Legal.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members. I would like to first of all thank Honorable Jessica for raising the issue about the role of the URA in policy making, because indeed that is a very valid concern, but it is also our duty. Under the URA Act, one of our duties really is to advise the Minister of Finance on our policy issues. It is an area that is developing. It is an area that I think we have tried to advise government. And I wanted to just give you two scenarios which also relate to the waivers. During COVID, we realized that the issue of penalties, if you've interacted with a number of our taxpayers, penalties and interest indeed can form a very big sum of the tax that is assessable. And we used to get a lot of complaints and said, but how can you have even assessments that have a figure of interest and penalties that are even more than the principal? And cognizant of the effects of COVID, we then made a proposal to the Minister of Finance, and indeed through the discussions, and it was presented to Parliament in 2020. Section 40C was then enacted in our Tax Procedures Code, where it provided that any tax that is outstanding as at 30th June 2020, all the penalties and the interest were waived off. So that is the one bit, and this was generally to everybody, but it was cognizant of the fact that taxpayers were struggling, and indeed the government needed to come in to relieve them of some of the burden. That was done. But also recently, because even after that waiver, again, we noted within the information that we have that taxpayers still were struggling with the issue of penalties and interest. We were still battling with that. This is a proposal that, again, we took to the Minister of Finance during the last budget engagements. And here I would like to thank you, Honorable Chair and members, indeed, really, because you supported that proposal. So we have now a new section, 40D, and courtesy of you, that the taxpayers, once they pay the principal now, they are by 30th, at the end of this financial year, all their penalties and interest will be waived. So these are some of the remedies coming in from the policy angle, which government is introducing. And of course, Parliament has supported these in terms of making sure that the people indeed are not overburdened by some of these measures. But also again, to thank you, Chair and honorable members, really Parliament also overwhelmingly supported a number of provisions that were brought in the tax bills. And here again, these were concluded within this financial year. So that is the first bit of the waivers. That
colleagues, there is too much murmuring. We want to capture what she's saying, then we'll respond if we want to at some point.
The
40D.
Why we're murmuring?
Yes.
Is on what is on the
all the tax procedures
because
code.
the minister said 31st December.
Yes, 31st of
but
December.
Then she was saying June. So we wanted that to clarify. But of course,
all the clarity, yes.
Of course, Chair, the getting comes to us. The problem was as we were amending the procedures, we should have insisted that should have been June, but we let it pass as December. Maybe that's where the problem was.
Yes, but it is the penalties that are outstanding as at 30th June, they shall be waived where the taxpayer pays the principal. So these are two things now. The tax and the penalties that is there that was outstanding, and then if by 31st of December 2023 you pay the principal, then that will be waived. And these waivers, because they are in the law, they are applicable to all the taxpayers. So here you don't even, whether you're rich or poor, really, there's no discrimination. Everybody will be entitled to these waivers. We only need you to pay the principal amount, and then that interest and the penalty will be waived. So that is the first category. And here, this is where Parliament leaders supported this. We also have another category of the waivers within still the Tax Procedures Code. And this is Section 40, where upon the recommendation of the Commissioner General, we can make a case to the Minister of Finance to consider a waiver. But however, there are grounds in the law. So the Commissioner General does not just wake up and make a recommendation. URA must be satisfied that there is a difficulty or there is hardship, or that this taxpayer really indeed the cost of recovery will be excessive on the part of government. So we must make a case, we must study the business of the taxpayer, we must look at the efforts and demonstrate to the Minister of Finance that we as the URA, indeed, we believe that this is a case of a taxpayer who needs a consideration in terms of the waiver. So that again, URA can only make a recommendation, and then it goes to the minister, who then waives that amount. However, Honorable Chair, maybe just for information, is that that particular provision also this financial year has been amended. That Section 40D has been amended. So these waivers that the minister was giving under Section 40 of the Tax Procedures Code, the amendment that was introduced effective over 1st July 2023 is that these will need the approval of Parliament. So again, now these cases, the minister will have to come to Parliament and adduce evidence that these particular taxpayers, indeed, there should be a waiver. So that was the only provision or the amendment that was introduced at this effective 1st of July. But that was the only thing that the Parliament now will be involved in these provisions. The last bit of the waivers, or what we call a waiver, is what we have in the law, what is called the tax holidays. These tax holidays as well, Honorable Chair and members, are covered within the law. If you look at, for instance, Section 21, there are a number of strategic sectors that have been put in the law, that if you make an investment within those areas, mainly manufacturing, agro-processing, some IT investments, then the investor is entitled to a tax holiday over 10 years from VAT, from income tax and excise duty. However, Honorable Chair and members, for you to qualify, or an investor to qualify for those exemptions or the tax holiday for the 10 years, there are conditions that must be met. There has to be a minimum capital investment, and amounts are included within the law. But also, most importantly, you must demonstrate that you are going to use local raw materials, because here government is promoting really the use of raw materials. So if you're not able to utilize the resources which are within, then you will not qualify. The last one, Honorable Chair and members, is
Honorable Abdara's question. We are aware of these tax holidays and the conditions, and how they normally tell you realize how they are going to create so many jobs, how much dollars they are bringing when it is fake. But let me come to the point. The question he was raising, that after calculating 10 years, he closes business and disappears. What steps do you take? Secondly, some have gone to the extent, let me give you an example of game, Rugogo. I negotiated for the workers, they got their package, but the game which is there now is different faces. They will change the name, but maintain the same business and come back to you to ask afresh for the tax holidays, because this is a different entity. Have you followed that on those?
Yes, Honorable
So in
Chair.
other words, somebody comes, makes money off us. Once the holiday season has run away, maybe they run to another country where there's a tax holiday or that kind of thing. That's the concern of members. Yes, go ahead.
Honorable Chair, yes, and here I must admit that the policies, or what we had, the mechanism for monitoring these exemptions indeed has been weak. And I'm sure you've heard PSST, I know he has mentioned it publicly, that we need to improve our monitoring of the investors who are receiving these tax holidays. So indeed, Honorable Chair and members, that is an area for improvement between the Ministry of Finance and the Uganda Revenue Authority. So the ministry has tasked us and the tax policy team within the ministry that we must work together to continuously monitor these people who are benefiting, because indeed you do not want a scenario where they are benefiting, or even then the conditions which are within the law or even in the agreement are not being met. So that is an area for improvement, Honorable Chair, that indeed we need to work on and make sure that there is value for money in terms of government foregoing revenue, but at the same time is the country benefiting in terms of job creation, for instance, and making sure that there is indeed value from the other sectors, because government would have given up money.
Chair,
On the issue of game.
There's a clarification.
Thank you very much, Chair. When patients, as the submission by patients is like we are in a movie. Personally, I'm conflicted here, but I've gone through what she's talking about on the ground, specifically for African businessmen. What you are saying is not true. I have colleagues who are virtually in the same sector, but privileged not to be Ugandan. Everything is smooth. We've tried to, because I have now declared my conflict, to put up small factories employing people in terms of payment of electricity and even numbers in a district. You are almost number 2. We've tried to bring in equipment and access your tax holidays. Everything is difficult. The conditions are not favorable. You have no sensitization at all. The issue of agency notice is a problem. They are subjecting you to anti-corruption court as if you were a thief. When you go to anti-corruption court, minimum bail bond, because I'm also surety over them. So we are really stressed. Everything is attached without any notice. It's like you're actually a thief. Instead of talking to us and sweet talking and thanking us for creating jobs and giving you taxes, you're actually a thief. I was 81 kilograms 3 months ago. Now I'm 65 because of an agency notice. Now I have one installment to pay. A check was bouncing because Katonga had whatever collapse. I could not access the mines. Then they said you have to pay for the check. Now, actually, I'm regretting why I did whatever I did. If you want to get it free and give it to people, because we are here, you have nowhere to talk to. Kindly, I want to thank the commissioner. The commissioner, I didn't even go. We said, okay, maybe this one we should give him some leave. Then instead of paying a full price, now it is now in his. You see, you better go down and see how there's a gentleman in Mukono, the Haji, who died. He died because of an agency notice. It was my friend, got from my office. They said they have blocked your account. The man collapsed up to tax. So whatever you are saying, tax holidays are for the businesses, you know. I don't want to mention. So for us here, I don't know whether it is a deliberate thing to throw out all African businessmen. People in Chukuba crying. So I think, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't want to contribute because I'm conflicted and at their mercy. At their mercy also. But I have my records, 81 kilograms. Now I'm 65 because of an agency notice.
Chair.
How would you take my daughter to Luzira? I hear anti-corruption. She has never even seen a cell. Muzungu, I am a uniform, you are ready. So I had to look for money. Even my wife is not aware that all this is going on. She can only tell at night because she's not seeing me anyway. I'm just praying from mat to mat. So I'm sorry, sir, but whatever she's saying is not true. And that you section this section is for foreigners.
And Chair, I have a small supplement.
In just 1 minute, Honorable Mother.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, in line of what Honorable Nsibambi has alluded to, and is a senior lawyer, so he speaks with honesty. However, I'm inclined to request through you, Chair, that the legal and would-be compliance team of URA provides this committee with a list of the taxpayers who were awarded these tax holidays and waivers in this particular period. And secondly, also avail the committee the list of applicants versus the list of those who were actually accorded these waivers and the tax holidays. And lastly, Chair, also in addition to what Honorable Nsibambi said, there are those businesses which actually finally closes because of huge taxes, but they find a challenge in closing their tax liability. A business closes, for example, a shop closes, registered for a tax. The bureaucracy of securing the closure of your tax obligation after closure of business is not guided well by URA. So some people are facing taxes of closed businesses for so many years ago, but they are still demanding taxes, and they are about to find URA recovering from them and attaching their properties. So we need to ascertain the present criteria for closed businesses to end and close their tax liability. Otherwise, URA has not guided in that particular field. But as well, Chair, I requested these documents through you.
Legal.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. So I'll quickly summarize the submissions. Senior Counsel, who also happens to be my lecturer, thank you so much. So I am learning and I'm still continuing to learn from my lecturer, Senior Counsel Nsibambi. These holidays which I was talking about really, and the provisions within the law, they are applicable and people are benefiting. But I think what has been missing is our interaction with the public, and this is what the Commissioner General was referring to, our sensitization. I think for me that is the missing link, because you've had people who know these provisions, they come and they benefit, but the ones who don't know, then they are not benefiting. So I think this is an area that, and the CJ I think has already committed to that, that we need to go out and massively sensitize our people. We need to be on the ground so that people know these provisions within the law. For instance, the one I've just talked about, the section 40D, it is here now, we have between now and the 31st of December. But if people do not know about that, they will not take advantage. When it gets to 1st of January 2024, that provision would have elapsed. So we need to continuously, I think, but these provisions, because they are in the law, everybody is entitled to them. So I think it is upon us now to see how we can sensitize our people so that they're able to take advantage of these. In terms of the exemptions, yes, and the power is within you, because these are provisions which are within the law. If you talk about capital investment over 100,000 for the citizens, that is something that indeed people could look at and say, maybe this is too high for the Ugandans or the citizens within, because within the law, when you say citizens, we actually refer to the EAC region. So that is still a policy matter. That Parliament could also make a recommendation and say, maybe can this be lowered? But indeed, these provisions are there and we are doing the best that we can. Maybe to just close, yes, the sensitization is which I've talked about. Indeed, that is a valid issue that we need to improve on. Just lastly, I wanted to make another submission that in addition to the objections processes, we have now introduced what we call the alternative dispute resolution, that even within after the 90 days, if a taxpayer is still aggrieved and they still feel that the URA has not understood their case, then we still have that room where they can come to us and we can still engage to make sure that maybe there is an amicable settlement, or that indeed, instead of going to a tax appeals tribunal, that this matter can still be settled internally within the Uganda Revenue Authority. I thank you, Chair and honorable members.
Chair. Yes, clarification.
Where you talk about the tax something appeals tribunal, is it where you have to first pay a percentage of the tax and then you now? Imagine I don't have money to pay now, and then I have to first pay a percentage of it before I come. I'm saying this is wrong. And then you're telling me pay a percentage of it, and then we can see what to do. Don't you think there is a lacuna in that clause?
And Chair, before she answers, her narration is plain English. Just plain English. Now, just plain English. We are talking about, and she requested, I thought she would commit to bring the list of the applicants for these waivers and holidays, and also those who were actually given. Because the presumption is local and indigenous persons are not granted those waivers, and the holidays only give foreigners and some with money. Where is the proof that actually there are those who have benefited vis-a-vis those who applied? Because we have those who say they applied to URA, they were never accorded waivers or even the holidays, much as they complied with the requirements of the law. Then just narrating the English, what has happened in this particular period, practical on ground in terms of beneficiaries versus applicants.
Okay, so the challenge seems to be, because like you're saying, on your part as URA, you're not sensitizing people enough. You want to up that. Honorable Sivambi on the other end is saying many Ugandan business people are practically not benefiting from this. You're saying it is available. It's just that they don't know. I don't think he did not know. But maybe there are complexities. How many people from your end are benefiting from these waivers? How many? And by people, I mean whether it be natural or the artificial ones, companies and that kind of thing. Do you have a figure on average?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. We have the office that directly deals with this. This is a business policy. They're the ones who are responsible for receiving the applications, and they vet them and then they are given. So maybe Honorable Charles, you can just give an estimate. But in terms of other details, and Honorable Council, that information is there. And Chair, really, if you give us time, we shall avail it to show you the people who have applied and the ones who have actually benefited and the ones that we have. So that information, Honorable Council, it is there and it will be provided.
Yeah, you can tell them that tomorrow they come with a list.
You said Commissioner what?
The Assistant Commissioner for Business Policy.
Yes. Give us a figure, an average one.
Thank you, Chair and honorable members. I just want to add that the investment capital for foreigners is $10 million for them to qualify for these incentives. And for citizens, it is $300,000. And citizens, as Commissioner Lego stated, whether you're from within the East African community, you qualify for that. But where you even invest up country, that is 50 kilometers away from Kampala, it is only $150,000 for you to qualify. However, the exemption is not for every business. The businesses which are there are listed, like agro processing and so on, mainly in the line of manufacturing and some IT areas, but that we can give the details later on. Now, an issue was raised about game, exemption to game. We can confirm that game did not benefit from these incentives because the nature of business that game was undertaking does not qualify it for the exemption. So that one, I want to put it straight. The other thing I want to comment about is that this benefits citizens and foreigners have equally benefited. Yeah, the records is there when we submit it, and you'll see that actually even citizens have benefited. For example, in Take Bakery, benefited just last month, I think. They are making an expansion, and all these are something like that, if I recall the name well. We have other local beneficiaries within Uganda. However, one thing that we need to note that the wording of the law, when they talk about citizens, this will also include people who may not be citizens of Uganda by birth, okay, like some Indians will also qualify because that is what the law says. Now, about the number of beneficiaries, there could be, it's about 100 for now, because the last time we submitted this report to Minister of Finance, which I believe was also submitted to Parliament, there were 84. I think now they could be in the range of 100 taxpayers who are benefiting from these incentives. I submit.
Chair,
okay, let's bring that list tomorrow.
Yes.
Tomorrow, because we are going to meet tomorrow.
Yeah. Chair.
We need to finish with you people.
Something small.
This week, so yeah, we'll meet tomorrow.
Chair, that's something
and
small.
Get out of the way. Can I just finish this?
No, Chair, it is
you don't want me to finish this.
It is for information. When we are talking about tax holidays, no, there is service providers and manufacturers. Are they treated the same?
Service providers and manufacturers, yes. They are not treated the same because what happens is that within the provision of the law, the strategic investments were listed. I think there are about 15 or so. Now, the only service providers are people in the IT section who are doing IT development or something like that. So okay, those are others. The hotels that we have, when you make investment in a hotel, but the problem with the hotel is that people are treated under the same investment amount, $8 million, whether you are a citizen or not. But these are the provisions that are within the law. And as a URA, we just go by what is in the law. So for such, they are there, but the only issue is that whether you're a foreigner or you're a citizen, you are treated the same way. These were. I also got a question. Let me respond that Sudhir, whether Sudhir has. The only exemption I'm aware of that Sudhir may be benefiting from is the convention center at Munyonyo. I hope you're aware of that, what is coming up. Now, this convention center is a partnership with government and is under construction. That is the only investment of Sudhir that may benefit, but that is because it is in partnership with the government as well. I submit.
Yes, Honorable Mzali.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if I have heard very well, he talks of 50 in a radius after 50 kilometers. That's when you can apply.
53.
That's for up country. Within Kampala, you can still apply, but your minimum capital investment is $300,000. Up country is $150,000 US.
So, Mr. Chairman, we request that those details be brought here tomorrow so that we can get to understand them better. Secondly, Honorable Sivambi, when he was actually giving out his narrative, the issue that I picked is the level of harshness, the way they are treated. It's like they are thieves. It's like they're criminals. I don't know, Wanaide, how you are going to handle this, because a taxpayer to be bundled into a corruption court, I think it's not proper. Then the other one is the element of $80 million for one to attract a waiver, really for local citizens, a Musoga like me, from to accumulate an investment of 80 million, unless I'm going to present false information.
What we'll do, colleagues, you see, there's changes that have to be made by us, because we are the ones who made these laws. Okay, whether it be we, 11th Parliament, or the previous ones, I mean Parliament, yeah? So the Musoga like you, as you're saying, would have to bring an amendment, you know, so that we are able to empower them not to squeeze the Ugandan people, you know, so that they don't go on a weight loss program like Honorable Sibambi. He's suffering because of, yeah, he's trying to create jobs for ordinary people, and there you are. So some of these might not be for them, but of course, where there are issues for URA, they've got to fix, because now there are those waivers which are by them. Somebody applies to the Commissioner General, and then you make an assessment, and that's the team, and so on. That's now within your discretion. And we need to be sure your discretion is not abused, that it gets to favor some and not others. Okay, so there's the law, which is by these people this side, us. Okay, then there's the discretion that you have, and we need to be certain it is not being abused. And that's why we need to see that list. Yes, CG, you want something?
Yes, thank you so much, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. Let me start with the issue of Honorable Sivambi. Honestly, Honorable, would like to apologize if there has been high-handedness in handling your matter. I would personally want to listen to you more and understand the nature of that case, so that we see how to address it. But Honorable Chair and members, there is a lot of transformation that is happening at our organization URA. And one of the areas we promise that we will address is the enforcement actions. Agency notice should not be used as a first line of action on a tax matter. And that's why the Commissioner Legal was talking about ADR, alternative dispute resolution, voluntary compliances. All these are options in the law. We want to commit to utilize them before we enforce. So if we enforced your company and we against you without proper engagement, we own up and we will listen and we will revert. Even the element you mentioned of allowing you to pay in installments, it is really, you're right. We are not doing you a favor. We have adopted this. It's within the administrative measures that we have adopted to try and ease the pain of taxpayers, especially as we come out of COVID and its impact. A taxpayer agrees that he owes this tax, but he has no capacity to pay it upfront. So we agreed to receive the payment in installments. Of course, the challenge it's creating is a big tax arrears, which is one of the measures of efficiency that we are measured on. But again, we are realists. We know that people are struggling. We must listen to them and see what they can manage. So if we've done that, that is good, but still to mention that it's your right, and we will listen and do that for many other businesses where we can. So I just wanted to apologize even before I listen, but also to ask you to engage us and we listen more about this and see how to ease the pain. Honorable Chair, the point you concluded with, we will provide the list of those people who have benefited to this way, who have benefited from these incentives. I'm not sure more from your system whether you can quickly generate the list of those who have applied, because if you can't generate it, then we also need to ask for a realistic timeline. Will it be ready tomorrow? Those who have applied, not those who have benefited.
CG, I think that we may need more time for those who applied.
So Honorable Chair, then our prayer to you and the committees that we provide those who have benefited by tomorrow, and as a follow-up, we can bring those who have applied after extracting that list from your from our system. Chair, I submit.
I just want us to be very clear here. You see, the other day we had asked for tax exemptions because sometimes incentives are different from these exemptions, which always keep coming. I think we categorize them. Those who under investment incentives, tax, which of course sometimes can be tax incentives, but there is also those exceptions which always keep coming, and for how long they have been running or for how long they have been given. So we needed that. It was among the list of the things we are supposed to have gotten today, just for emphasis and to differentiate those.
So you get a different categorization. So
Yes,
it should be, the list should be clear.
Clarify, yeah.
Yes, Honorable Siwamala.
Yes, slightly. I would love to know the URA service points for most of the Ugandans are quite far, because you people are only considering people that are in the cities or in the municipalities. Now I'm looking at somebody that is deep in Masaka, Ukoma, Simbi, and other places. And then these people do not even know anything about tax filing. Yes, they are making money from selling their coffee and the fish and these other things, and they are rich in the villages. But they don't have points. And then you come, because there's a TIN number, somehow you even doesn't know what it means to file. And then the nearest URA point is, I think, 30 miles away or 40 miles away. And it is not within his jurisdiction to look for it even, because he's living his life in the village, at his farm or at his plantation or something. Is there anything being done about such people? Because their taxes keep accumulating on their TIN numbers. They don't even know. They could stop in S3, S2. They don't even know whether they should file.
Okay. Quick response.
Chair, before the response, there's just one thing I mentioned earlier, which he has not addressed. We are talking about tax registration. The law as it is, registration and liability has an end. Now we have a problem of people and companies which registered for taxes, they have closed the business, or even people
maybe we'll address that as we handle revenue, because I saw there is a challenge of some banks that closed. and they fall in a similar situation to the
Yeah,
tune of
because-
over 900 million. So we'll handle that tomorrow. Yeah, let's respond to the other question.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. The question from Honorable Engineer Richard on the remote businesses that we are not able to reach. True, this is a challenge. For now, we have our presence in about 120 offices across the country. So for many districts, we have not reached. For some places, we have presences around the regions to serve a number of districts. So we know that we still have a gap in reaching every taxpayer. The ideal situation would be at least to have a presence in every district. Then you can bank on that district team to reach every trading center and municipality within. We are working on expanding the team, and we'll seek the approval of Parliament to help us give the numbers. Just as an example, recently we visited Ireland with a population of only 5 million people, and with the collecting team, taxpayers of 7,000. Uganda with 45 million, the team at URA is only 3,400. So really we have limitation in numbers and outreach. But some of the measures we are taking, Honorable Chair and members, is mobile offices. We have acquired 2 mobile offices. We call them Tujenge. These are buses that we have customized into revenue offices. So what we do, we dedicate these buses to certain districts where we don't have a presence, and we make sure they go systematically from town to town, sensitizing, registering, and answering queries of taxes. Our plan is to have 4 buses. For now, we still have 2, but we hope that once we have the numbers, then we'll try and reach.
Chair. You see, we are talking about ignorance of the taxpayer. If you decide to use one language, to Jenge, how will someone from Teso, from Acholi? Because if I see a bus with that name, it has a different meaning completely. So you must, when you apply, you either apply all the common languages. Of course, we have English and Kiswahili. Then you can have theirs. You have Bantu, the Luo, and such that.
And the Uganda.
Please, I am advocating for people who pay taxes in my place. I want them also not to be ambushed, and we end up reducing our weight, like Honorable Sibambi has done.
Okay.
We are being harassed because we didn't understand. So it's very important when you are communicating. It should be understood by everyone.
Yeah, of course, Swahili is our second language generally, but you need to learn to communicate, because now, as he's saying, to Jenge in some languages might mean I will beat you or I don't know what, you know. But anyhow, communication. Colleagues, I would like that we finish these 2 items in the corporate report, so that tomorrow we handle revenue and finish. Yeah. And we have plenary. So, and these 2 items are brief. This unapproved multi-year contract and delayed procurement. I wanted us to finish those in 5 or so minutes.
Chair, and you should guide that we concentrate on accountability rather than policy issues. Now we are going in sector issues.
Yeah,
yet we are handling accountability.
Of course, whenever
we are taking a lot of time.
Representatives of the people get chance, they raise the issues that affect their people. Can I suggest that we just knock off these 2, and then maybe in the last few minutes we can capture those other spillover questions, yeah, so that we manage our time properly. So we would like you to address us on unapproved multi-year contracts and then the delayed procurements. These multi-year contracts, the challenge is you are committing government much more than should happen. And Parliament has not approved, because Parliament is the one that appropriates. I was looking for the exact figure here. There's a figure of 27.4 billion. Yeah, these are multi-year contracts. You're not getting approval from our end. Why? What's happening around that? And then also the delayed procurements to the tune of 65 billion, because it affects service delivery at the end of the day.
Chair, just put it this way. Because, you know, the URA does not submit directly to Parliament. It goes through finance.
Yes.
what we would only want to know from you, whether you communicated to finance and what did they do? Then we take over with finance because it's finance that brings them here.
No.
Two,
Procedure.
you give us the list of those multi-year projects.
Procedure.
No, let's get to the responses. Really, we are running out of time. Mr. Rujoki.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members. I can right away confirm that yes, for the multi-year contracts, we write to the Ministry of Finance. Yes, we list them and we have the evidence. If it's not here with us, we'll come with it tomorrow. But it's in the, okay, that is Annex what? Annex 16 in the main document is a sample letter to the Ministry of Finance listing the multi-year contracts. But Honorable Chair and members, in the interest of time, I want to ask the AC Finance to speak a little more on that and on the second part of the question, which is the delayed procurements of 65 billion. Thank you.
And also, which are these projects?
Finance.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, CG. And as CG has already mentioned, I'll only supplement that annually we make the submission to the Minister for Finance with a schedule of those items that are covering more than 1 year. I'll also would like to explain that under the Public Finance Management Act, the Minister then is responsible for submitting those to Parliament along with the budget for the year. And so we fulfill our obligation by giving him that list that relates to us specifically. But also in our case, many of the items that we have listed are actually allocations that are available in our MTEF for the year. However, for purposes of making our administration better, we get into contracts for 3 years, but the annual budget allocated is within the budget for that year. So we are only solving an administrative challenge because many of these procurements are of a nature, open or international bidding. So the duration of time that it would take to do an annual contract would almost be involved in procurement all year round because they are quite a number. So we do it for administrative purposes to shorten the lead time and to make it easier for us to ensure that we have continuity of services. And many of these relate to the critical IT solutions that we make use of as an organization. So we are only ensuring that we are more efficient in our delivery and that we don't suffer any periods when we don't have a contract in place to allow us run. But yes, we submit on an annual basis and the schedule is available in the document.
Just to be clear, you say you submit the contracts?
We submit the schedule of those multi-year commitments or contracts. So we'll list the
You submit where?
To the Minister for Finance. We write to the Minister.
Okay, we'll need evidence of that because ultimately what's indicative here is there's no evidence of parliamentary approval.
Annex 16 is our submission to the Minister. And the list
is that of the big document?
Is also attached in the big document under the corporate report.
Only that there's no response in it. You submitted, but there's no response because this is just your communication, but the response is not there. Then two,
he said Annex 16.
Annex 16 is different.
16
Annex 16.
Statutory instrument.
Page 22.
Statement of multi-year expenditure.
The corporate report, the first one.
Yeah, it's here.
The first report.
I have
Annex 16.
But
yeah, look at the orange around that.
Chair, as you look for it, this is a legal requirement. You have a legal department with the head of URA here. You want to say that whether Minister of Finance complies or not, for you, you are inclined to do whatever you have to do, regardless of whether it complies with the law or not. I just want to understand, because when the Auditor General is very clear that failure to obtain parliamentary approval for these commitments is irregular and could lead to commitment of government without necessary funding. How do you transact then? That for you as URA, you do whatever you have planned to do, whether it has been approved or not. We need to be clear on this because it has been a very underlined statement within the Auditor General's report. That for you, whether there is approval or not, once you write somewhere, whether the letter has reached or not, you will proceed. Is it your submission? Yes.
You want to respond to that?
Honorable Chair, my only response to that is that when we get this confirmation in our MTF, we know that definitely finance has consulted Parliament. But should that not be the case, then we'd still have to ask Ministry of Finance. What is required of us is to write to them, and this is what we do, Honorable Chair and members.
Okay, so
yeah, can you have a better font for us? Because even with glasses, I can't read the list here of those multi the multi or those projects. We can have a better font.
Yes, we've noted that, Honorable Chair and member.
so let's bring a better one tomorrow.
That's
but,
right.
But Chair, as well, the recommendation of the Auditor General,
sound.
Honorable members, Madam Speaker.
Prayer.
Almighty God, who in your infinite wisdom and providential goodness have appointed the offices of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of humanity, we beseech you to look upon with your abundant favor these your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to the performance of such important trusts in this land. Let your blessing descend upon them here assembled, and grant that they may, as in your presence, treat and consider all matters that shall come under their deliberation in such just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the good of those whose interests you have committed to their charge. Amen.
This woman is the one who brought me. My girlfriend. My girlfriend. By the same amount of course, my better song. No, don't champagne period, don't need here, but you eat champagne. Now you're going to just. No, I've been watching. How is your company? Oh, this soda, what is it? Soda, what is it? Soda, what is it?
Item 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable members, I want to welcome you to this afternoon sitting. As I undertook yesterday, that would convene a meeting on issues of the road safety. We had a meeting this morning. We convened a meeting, and in attendance was the Minister of Works and Transport. We had the government chief whip. We had the ED of UNRWA. We had the leader of opposition. We had representatives from police plus the PS of police. That's internal affairs. And my good self. You people, if you don't, then I also had a chairman infrastructure and a chairman of road safety. If you don't love yourself, who will love you? The meeting was exhaustively debated. We deliberated on a number of issues on road safety. We adopted resolutions, which resolutions I'm going to read to you on what we should do on the immediate, medium, and long term. As both Parliament, the public, and executive. And I want to read, and these messages, these resolutions are from all the people who attended the meeting. Resolutions of the meeting on the road safety held on 13th July 2023. On the 13th July 2023, the Speaker convened a meeting with the Minister of Works and Transport, the Executive Director, Uganda National Roads Authority, the Government Chief Whip, the Leader of Opposition, the Uganda Police Force, the Minister of Health, the Chairman of the Road Safety in Parliament, Chair of Infrastructure in Parliament, and then the Shadow Minister of Infrastructure of Transport in Parliament. Immediate interventions. Enforcement of relevant laws and regulations is number 1. Whereas the Traffic and Road Safety Act 1998 has attendant regulations that have aided its operationalization, the Road Act of 2019, which addresses the various aspects of the road safety, does not have regulations. There is need for regulations to operationalize Section 57, 58, and 59 on the towing and auctioning of abandoned or broken down automobiles on the carriageways. UNRA has immediately offered at least 8 tow vehicles to tow the abandoned vehicles on the roads. That's an immediate action. The Ministry of Works and Transport must expedite the development of regulations to operationalize the Road Act 2019. The Minister of Works undertook to table the regulations operationalizing the Road Act 2019 within 1 month, and that is by 13th August 2023, we should be having regulations on the floor. That is 1. 2, streamlining the motor vehicle registration function under the Ministry of Works and Transport, which requires an addition of 40 billion shillings. The Ministry of Works and Transport needs 40 billion shillings to streamline its registration. 3, the Minister of ICT and National Guidance and Uganda Communication Commission should ensure immediate dissemination of pop-up messages on road safety to all mobile phone users. All the service providers, MTN, Warid, all of them must be able to send messages to people warning them against accidents. And this should be done by UCC. Through UCC, the minister should communicate to UCC, and UCC should inform all the service providers. As of today, all the televisions have agreed to give us airtime for us to be able to create awareness on accidents for free. It's a fight for the whole country. It's no longer an issue of parliament. Replacing missing road furniture, such as the road signs, reflectors, fences, etc., and exploring the use of appropriate alternative materials to minimize the vandalized ones and safety. We have road furnitures that have been stolen, the signs have been stolen, So we are saying they must be replaced immediately and maybe use another material which cannot easily be stolen. 5, conclusion of memorandum of understanding between the public agencies responsible for transport and road safety and the private sector on the towing of abandoned vehicles. We are saying that the law says the vehicles will be towed at the cost of the owner. Now, the fact that we do not have money as government, and the law is very clear. So we are saying, let's have private institutions that should be able to do that, so that we don't all the time start saying we don't have money, we don't have money. Let it be done by private person who will ensure that he monitors that there are no vehicles on the road, and if there's a vehicle, it is towed aside. 6, sensitization and enforcement of motor third-party insurance. Whereas the motor third-party insurance introduced by the Motor Vehicle Insurance, that is Third-Party Risk Act in 1989, provide for compulsory insurance against a third-party bodily risk in respect to use of motor vehicles. Oftentimes, victims of accidents are not indemnified. There is need for more sensitization on the third-party insurance. You find most of these people who get accidents end up in hospitals. It's again government looking after these people. They are not compensated. They just end up like that. Whereas they are supposed to be indemnified by third party. So the third party insurance should be able to cover that. 7, increase public education and awareness on the road safety in order to shape the road user behavior. There is need for constant and consistent sensitization of the general public on the road safety using all available media, social media, TVs, radios, and all those. The meeting was notified that out of the required budget of 20 billion of the road safety, only 5 billion was provided for. There is therefore need for adequate resourcing of the road safety function across the whole country. And because we are talking about the increased education, that's why we are saying we need a team from WACS, UNRWA, from police, even the volunteers from parliament, if you can, to move from radio to radio, TV to TV, to talk to Ugandans about issues of safety, issues of road safety. It's a very serious matter. Whereas we have other diseases, those ones you can be able to handle, but accidents, these people need to be tested. These people need to be checked. When you get a person like Komakesh, he will tell you that you need to test somebody's head all the time. We're told of some people who have diabetes. Somebody has diabetes and maybe gets an attack during the process and he fails to drive, and that's how he causes an accident. Uganda Police Force should scale up the monitoring and enforce compliance with the right way and use the lead cars. Uganda Police Force should scale up monitoring and enforce compliance with the right of way and use of lead cars. Not everybody has a right of way. Honorable members, it's not just a matter of saying, not everybody has a right of way. Not everybody is supposed to have a siren on his or her car. Not everybody is supposed to have those lead lights on the cars. And what we agreed, this must be immediate. Remove them. The persons who are got with that are culpable. They will have breached the law. It is very clear who has a right of way. Now, these people who come with the sirens, with the lead cars, push you off the road. I know I have it, but I have a right. Okay? But they start pushing you out of the road. The Honorable Minister was telling us I was pushed out of the road. So we are trying, we need to work on what can reduce accidents on the road. And it starts with this house. It starts with this house. Honorable Isengoma, kindly first go and dress well, then you come back. Then we have responsible use of government cars. Are we together? Government vehicles continue to be the highest perpetrators of the traffic offenses, including the road accidents. In 2022, I am reporting what was reported in the meeting. In 2022, over 500 government vehicles were involved in accidents, in causing accidents. Therefore, there is need for us to be more responsible when we are using government vehicles, backed up by sanctions for misuse of the cars that have been given to them. And we must follow the standing orders that are available. And this was a report from police. 10, compliance with the speed limit. There is need for stringent enforcement and increased sensitization of road users on compliance with the speed limit. There is urgent need to reintroduce the installation of speed governors in all vehicles to regulate the speed. 11, UNRA is directed. UNRA is directed to immediately remove the roadside markets and taxi parks that have encroached onto the roads and road reserves. For example, when you go to Busega, will you even pass? When you go to Lukaya, Kareilwe, Kamocha, all those areas, you go to Kireka, Chalwajala, you see all those areas. There is a main road, but there is a market inside the main road. Which kind of country are we living in? And then we start complaining, accidents. Local leaders should create awareness on the need to comply with the road safety rules and regulations. The mistake we make as politicians, we instead go back and tell our people, you do it for the sake of votes. You continue. And yet you know very well that the same voters of yours are going to die of these accidents. So it is such with us, the leaders, let's talk to the people and make people understand what is good for them in terms of road safety. But if we use this as a way of looking for votes, then it will not help us. The Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development should increase the recurrent budget. The recurrent budget allocation for UNRA, Minister of Works, and Uganda Police Force for immediate road safety intervention. The immediate road safety intervention is what we have talked about, removing those cars from the road, making sure that we replace the signposts that have been removed, making sure that we create awareness of what is happening with the road safety, ensuring that these sirens of yours are removed. The sirens are removed, and making sure that you enforce the third-party issue, creating the education, compliance with the speed. And we still got a very funny example from one of the ministers. At one time when he was driving, was following some big person. And the big person was driving and was following. When he realized he was driving at 140 kilometers per hour, then he said, you know, I think I have a family. If you want to reach early, leave early. Okay? And these drivers who think they want on defensive driving should stop it, because they are the ones causing problems. So many of them. We still need you alive. Less respect. By the time they put a speedometer there, they have not told you to finish it. Because at the end of the day, you will go alone. Now imagine the driver who is driving recklessly will even survive. You, the person, you have gone. What will happen? The medium-term interventions, reintroduction of periodic mandatory vehicle inspection. Under the police force, this requires adequate resourcing and equipping of Uganda police force. In the 10th Parliament, we had the SGS. When we had the SGS, you saw what happened with the SGS. This Parliament made a resolution that it should go back to police. And now we are saying police must activate and make sure that we have the annual inspection of these vehicles. Adequate equipping of relevant enforcement agencies with relevant tools, including but not limited to the numbers, equipment, and automobiles to aid effective enforcement of the law, particularly for drivers testing and training. There is need to reduce physical contact between enforcement personnel and drivers to minimize the incidences of corruption. The instances of corruption where you see a driver coming and giving kitu kidogo, whereas he has been over speeding. And I was asking a question. I have seen these things that look like guns on the road. Are they toys or what? So they are saying they want to have a number of them so that we reduce that touch of person to person. They deal with them with digital. Remember, we passed a law here. Whoever is found over speeding pays how much money? How much? We need to get that money. Government should invest in automatic number plates, recognition cameras linked with the ticketing of offenders, and speed guns. The speed guns that we are talking about. Strengthening the road monitoring and surveillance. Among others, timely detection and removal of abandoned vehicles or carriages away from where they've been parked, and reprimanding the drivers and the owners of those vehicles. UNRWA needs adequate resourcing for recite equipment of communication and towing of abandoned vehicles. You find most of these cars get spoiled on the way, you don't know that in the middle of a park. So you find in that area, there's even no network, you cannot know what is there. So the regional officers should be able to communicate on what is happening on the vehicles that have gotten accidents and are likely to get accidents, or those that have gotten spoiled in some areas and are likely to cause accidents, and they should be removed away from the roadside. The long-term intervention, automation of regulatory and monitoring process to minimize human contact and reduce incidents of corruption and influence peddling. 2, enhance the budgetary provisions for relevant agencies in the road safety value chain, especially capital budgets. 3, general strengthening of the road safety monitoring and enforcement. That is enforcement of speed limits around the blind and black spots, notably the market areas, the schools and other public facilities. 4, road design should match the growing population of the people and vehicles for strategic development plans of the country. 5, the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development should increase on the development budget allocation on UNRWA, Minister of Works, Police Force, so that to ensure safety measures are put in place. And finally, we agreed to have a monthly meeting to evaluate on what we agreed on immediate intervention on how it is performing. That's what we agreed. Honorable members, as leaders, we should prioritize on the lives and living conditions of our masses. It should be a precondition for a sustainable development. All this we are labeling to do. We started that meeting as early as 8, but we are doing it for the good of our people. As a house, we will require to have a quarterly update on actions taken to stem the road and water carnage. The minister will have to give us a report always. Honorable members, I will also vary the order paper to accommodate the laying of integrated annual report on National Water and Sewage Corporation for financial year 2021-2022 by the Minister of State for Environment, Honorable Beatrice Anywa, and she will also respond on the issue of Aswa Ranch. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. I wish to lay on the table, Right Honorable Speaker, the integrated annual report of National Water and Sewerage Corporation for the year 2021-2022. I beg to lay.
Thank you. Please lay and refer to the Committee of Natural Resources.
Thank you once more, Right Honorable Speaker, for this golden opportunity. Right Honorable Speaker, yesterday you tasked me to bring to this House information concerning the Achua Ranch, where a prison officer is dealing in charcoal and no one can access the place. I beg to report to this Honorable House, Right Honorable Speaker, that Achua Ranch is a government ranch. And in August 2022, about 30,000 acres of land was given to Uganda prisons as an intervention for food security. And so far, Right Honorable Speaker, the Uganda prison, under the leadership of Superintendent Gerard Chiwanuka, have cleared about 4,000 hectares, which is under cultivation for maize. And Right Honorable Speaker, in the process of clearing such land for cultivation, the trees, the bushes which are there were equally cleared. And these are the trees and shrubs. Some were taken as firewood to the prisons in the country to help in the cooking for our prisoners, and some were used for charcoal. I got in touch with the Commissioner General, and he told me they're not engaged in the commercial charcoal burning for sale. Right Honorable Speaker, it should also be noted that this government intervention through the Uganda prisons for our food security is not only taking place in Achua Ranch. We have Odina in Soroti, 900 hectares under cultivation. We have Bingire, Serere, 700 acres under cultivation. Kumi, 59 acres. Away in Leptom, 1,700 hectares. Aloi, Ogom, Aleptong, 700 hectares.